and I don't know if you've seen the email or not. Erin can read it again.
I have.
Are they splitting hairs? Do you think they mean that both? Do you think the GOP poll, the JMC poll taken last weekend, do you take it to mean that both Taliaferro and Savage are in second and third place and Perkins is fourth behind Ali at 27? Or do you take it to mean, as was presented to us earlier this morning, that Taliaferro and Savage combined have more than Perkins?
I don't know that we can answer that question. They have not really given you that full, complete poll. That's one reason I don't like polls.
But do you think it's an outrageous, I don't want to say accusation, do you think it's an outrageous assumption to think that they might be, I don't want to say twisting the numbers a little bit, but...
I think that there's something hidden in those numbers they don't want people to see.
We didn't take it that way at all. What was that again? I'm sorry.
I think there's something hidden in the numbers they don't want people to see, or they would just put the poll out. And that's one reason I don't like polls. I think they made it very clear in the poll, from what I've seen, that Ms. Tyler is at around 27%. That seems to be,
and that's a number that you have embraced all along.
I've called her at 30%, so I can't really disagree with that point in time, that moment when they polled. I think they have put Mr. Jackson clearly in fifth. They've put him as low as 5%. I personally think that's a little low, but I haven't seen the poll. But let's accept their numbers and say he's in fifth place.
Bluntly speaking, is Stephen just not a player at this point?
Well, he apparently doesn't have a base. He is an elected official. He has a district that elects him. But if all the let's take all the polls. We've heard of 3 or 4 polls that seem to have Mr. Jackson consistently in fifth place,
and consistently Ollie's number 1.
And so we'll accept that. I don't accept that he's low as 5% personally, but we'll accept that poll. And so you get to the interesting part. And you start breaking down what they did try and say in one of those paragraphs. And one of your nighttime anchors, I think, did a really good job last night of trying to break that down a little bit. They gave a fact. They said that Mr. Perkins is double digits below Miss Tyler. So
That's
if you're
10.
trying to keep your own score, that's at least 10. Let's say it's 10 based on the verbiage. I think they're stretching every point they can stretch to make their point here. So that means that Mr. Perkins is probably at least below 17% if they're giving you facts.
Yeah, because the midway between Ollie and said at midway that Perkins was just below the midway point between 5 and 26.
And the midway is 16.
Which is 16.
So it put him at 15.
So based on what they're saying, you put Perkins around 15 or 16. Then I think what you're talking about, Robert, is there's another line. I don't have it exactly in front of me, where they said, and they trail the Republican candidates by a couple of points. And so that would then put the Republican candidates likely somewhere around the 16, 17, 18% mark. There's also a number that's not being talked about. That's in every poll that's done, and we don't know if it's in this one. That's undecideds. And so I think if you're just taking 100 points and working backwards, you might think the Republicans, and they're trying to imply to you that the Republicans are up at a higher number. I believe they're sitting around 17, 18%.
Let me phrase it to you this way. If Ollie's at 27, which doesn't seem to be an outrageous percentage at all.
Agreed.
And Adrian is at about, let's say, 14 or 15%, which I don't think is an outrageous number at all. But when the GOP poll says, let me rephrase it. Let me phrase it this way. Do you think that Savage and Taliaferro are at 17 or 18 or 19% apiece? Or do you think that Taliaferro and Savage are at a combined 17 or 18 or 19%?
I think it's more likely they are both in that area of 15 to 20%, 17, 18 to use your number. There's roughly 35% registered Republicans in this town, maybe 40, depending on if you count those who vote Republican. I'll say it that way, maybe not registered. So it is very conceivable that two of them together are attracting that voter block, and together that would be about 35%. Now, I think the problem the Republicans have is that they did the poll for a very specific reason. They did the poll to try to determine which one should drop out.
Yes.
And the poll didn't answer that question.
No.
So the poll's useless to them. So now they're trying to find another use for the poll, and they're clearly trying to go after Perkins and say that you should not vote for Perkins.
The headline on it says, new polling data shows Jim Taliaferro and Lee Savage best positioned to defeat incumbent Ollie Tyler in December. Is that pipe dreaming?
I think that's creative headline writing, because they're trying to imply to you that the two together, say they each have 18%. It's given what I think is the benefit of the doubt. They each have 18%. That's only 36%. That means that they're still going to have the traditional problem. I'm not saying they cannot win. One of those candidates can probably still win if they get to the runoff. That's why we held elections. But at the end of the day, it's the same problem that Victoria Provenza had last time. It's the same problem that Jerry Jones had against Cedric Glover. It's one thing to make the runoff. It's another thing to get that crossover vote and get over 50%.
It'll be a lot easier, pardon me, it'll be a lot easier for Taliaferro to get Savage votes or Savage to get Taliaferro votes than it will be for
them to get Adrian Perkins' votes.
Bingo.